you're just a parasite living off your husband. So it's fitting for someone like you to live in the storage shed. One day, when I returned home where I live with my husband and mother-in-law, my room was empty. There was only one person I could think of who would do this. It was the work of my mother-in-law, who mercilessly torments her daughter-in-law. When I confronted her about the whereabouts of my belongings, she nonchalantly said she had thrown everything into the storage room. From now on, that's your place in this house. Don't come over here anymore. Oh, I will allow you to use the toilet and the bath. We wouldn't want any bad smells coming from the yard. She seemed delighted by the thought of having driven me out. I can't take it anymore. I cannot live with someone who treats me this way any longer. I cannot live in such a place. I am moving out. My mother-in-law doesn't realize her big mistake. To escape this hellish situation, I called someone. I wonder how long she can keep that smug, grinning face. I'm looking forward to seeing her expression when she finds out who I really am. My name is Ashley Hansen, I'm 40 years old. I work in the beauty industry. Since joining the company, my life has been all about work. I work from morning till night on weekdays, and even after coming home, I continue with office tasks. As I've grown older and my position has elevated, my responsibilities expanded to include creating materials for meetings and managing sales. It's tough, but it's what I've always wanted to do, and I've been fulfilled. Entering my 40s, I shifted to a more flexible, part-time-like work style, where I could show up at work whenever I wanted. Recently, since my late 30s, I've had a minor concern. It's about how all my friends are getting married one after another. Some of them already have children. Hearing about peers with middle school-aged children makes me feel the passage of time. I fondly remember receiving a wedding invitation from a friend I've known since school, who always talked about wanting to get married and have 2 children. When I heard she had a child, I congratulated her. But deep down, I felt a bit lonely. When we were younger, we traveled abroad together. But it's hard to leave home for a few days when you have small children. Even friends without children value the couple's time, making it harder to ask them out frequently. Seeing the beautiful rings on everyone's ring fingers made me feel envious and left out. I don't have a partner, and there's no sign of marriage in my future. I had relationships in my 20s and 30s, but because of my busy schedule, I couldn't find the time to meet and eventually broke up. I can't tell what's more important to you, your job or me. I never thought I would hear such a line like in the comics. One day, I went to a cafe with a friend I hadn't seen in a while. She had gotten married a few years ago and was living a happy life. I decided to talk about my concerns. I don't have many chances to meet anyone. My workplace is mostly women, and I don't have any male friends. Hearing this, my friend suggested, "Why don't you try a marriage bureau?" I met my husband there, while drinking a cafe latte. I searched for the name of the marriage bureau my friend mentioned on my smartphone. The address and opening hours were displayed, along with reviews. The rating was quite high at 4.9 stars. The reviews glittered with comments like, "Thanks to this place, I met a wonderful partner, and I was able to remarry." I decided to give it a try and made an appointment. "Ms. Hansen, we've been expecting you. Please, come this way." On the day of my reservation, I was greeted by a friendly-looking woman at the consultation office. She appeared to be the marriage advisor here. The room was clean and predominantly white. I got an explanation about how the matchmaking process would proceed. I immediately decided to join. It was good that I had researched online beforehand and prepared the necessary documents for membership. I took a file out of my bag and handed it to the advisor. "Let's start by filling out your profile. While receiving advice, I carefully began to write detailed information about myself, including my name, address, body type, occupation, income, and more. First, one must create a profile that makes others think, I feel like we could be compatible, before you can even meet. From the desire to meet someone compatible, I also meticulously wrote about my hobbies. Sometime after I started my matchmaking efforts, I met the man who would become my husband, David Owen. He was 35, 5 years younger than me. Reading his profile, we had many things in common like enjoying delicious food and liking music. We met several times and, after a few months of dating, we got married. I thought I could be happy forever with this kind man. I never imagined the feelings I had when he proposed could ever be betrayed. From the moment we went to his family's home for the marriage introductions, I felt a slight discomfort. The distance between my husband and his mother, Helen, seemed closer than what's typical for families. When we were seated in the living room, my husband sat not next to me but across from me, next to his mother. Shouldn't he be sitting next to me normally? I'm the one he's marrying, yet I'm confused about my position here. Mom, I'm marrying Ashley. My husband gestured towards me from across the room, and so I said, I am marrying David. A contrived sigh was heard, so I hurriedly looked up, worried I had done something rude. Ms. Hanson? Yes. Bracing myself for what she might say with that cold voice. You're 40, right? Older than Davy. Are you sure it's okay? Can you really make it as a wife? Davy. I was somewhat puzzled that she used such a nickname for her son in his 30s. But, since my father-in-law had passed away early, they had lived together for a long time. And it was natural for a mother and son to be close. Yes. I want to join hands with David and support each other. I don't think age matters. As I said this with a straight back, my husband kindly nodded. It seemed that satisfied her when he agreed. I don't want to leave my mother alone. So I'd like to live together after we get married. Is that okay? Since he had mentioned this before, it was decided that I would live with my husband and mother-in-law in his family home. However, my discomfort there only grew. When my husband was about to leave the house, he was bombarded with questions like, Davy, what time will you be back today, and who are you going out with? He seemed unfazed and casually replied, I'll be back by 6 p.m. He must have been accustomed to this before. My mother-in-law was overly protective of her son. Conversely, she was cold to me. She generally didn't speak to me. If there was something to be said, she made it a point to communicate through my husband, making it needlessly complicated. However, when she did speak to me directly, it was usually to make snide remarks, gleefully lining up words. You know, you're able to live today because of Davy, right? Make sure you're grateful and respect your husband. Really, it's good that Davy agreed to marry you. There were also times when such imposing and ungrateful remarks were made. Even when I talked to my husband about it, he would only say, well. He never took my side. It was not apparent until we lived together. But it turns out that the affection was not a one-way street from my mother-in-law to my husband. David also had quite a penchant for being a mama's boy. Even when faced with sarcasm, he wouldn't stand up to my mother-in-law. He even claimed that the meals tasted better when his mother made them, compared to when I cooked. During our dating period, he used to praise my cooking endlessly, saying how delicious it was every time I served him a meal. Now, he finishes his meals quickly without saying anything, whereas he gets seconds whenever his mother cooks, saying, Davy, there's still more. Mom, has been just the two of us for so long, maybe she feels a bit lonely? I think she sees Ashley like a daughter. Don't take it to heart if she says a little something. He would say things like that eventually. I thought, lonely? Like a daughter? On the contrary. My mother-in-law sometimes implied that she preferred it when it was just the two of them. And, can someone who supposedly thinks of another as a daughter speak so sarcastically without hesitation? In front of my husband, I couldn't let my emotions explode. So I kept my complaints to a minimum, expressing just how sad the sarcasm made me feel. And tried to respond like an adult. When at home, my body felt increasingly heavy, and when alone, I couldn't stop sighing. Having only been married for a short time, I worried about what the future held. After a few months, feeling physically heavy became the norm. Until then, it had been just cold words and ignoring me, but finally, it escalated to actions that could only be described as bullying. On days when my mother-in-law cooked, "Davy, dinner's ready," she would call out from the kitchen in a coddling voice. It was common for her not to call me, but now it seemed she had completely erased my existence. Mother, there's no food for me. Only my husband and mother-in-law had food set out at the dining table. Despite my calling out, they started eating quietly together. Thinking that there must still be food left in the pots because my husband always had seconds. I peeked and, as expected, found some soup and a streak left. There were still vegetables in the pot, so I decided to serve myself and eat standing in the kitchen. The seat I usually sat at was cluttered with loads of stuff. And it seemed too much of a hassle to clear it. It must have been my mother-in-law who placed it there. Oh, that's not very polite, is it? After finishing her meal, my mother-in-law came back to the kitchen to put away the dishes. She looked at me with utter disdain and spat those words out. Then my husband followed her, but all he said was, "Wouldn't it be better to sit down to eat?" Other incidents included times when I planned to take the last bath on a cold day, only to find the water heater had been turned off, or finding my laundry, which I had washed and put in the dryer, inexplicably dropped on the ground, forcing me to wash it again. Now, the bullying had become blatant, and my husband did nothing about it. Why wouldn't he say anything when his wife was being treated like this right in front of him? Is this really how you treat someone you think of as a daughter? Remembering what my husband had previously said, I questioned this in my mind while glaring at his back. Then, one day, while I was working at home, my rarely calling mother-in-law phoned from outside. Since she rarely calls, her contact was buried far down in the call history, giving me a bad feeling about this unexpected call. "Hello? Helen, what's the matter?" "Hello, Ashley." It had been ages since she called me by name. I wondered if the last time was on the day we introduced ourselves for marriage. Then, in a rushed voice, she blurted out, "Davy has been taken to the hospital." I could tell from the phone call that she was panicking. "What?" "The hospital." "Yes, it seems like acute cholangitis. Please come to the hospital quickly." I hurried to the hospital she mentioned. As I told the receptionist my husband's name, they let me through immediately. "Are you his wife?" I entered through the door to find the doctor and my mother-in-law already there. Seated on a stool, her hands clasped together as if praying for her son's safety. "You may have already heard from your mother-in-law, but your husband has acute cholangitis. He will need surgery and hospitalization. Please save Davy." My mother-in-law reacted quicker than I could to the doctor's words. "Immediate treatment is necessary, so may we proceed with the surgery?" "Yes." "Please take care of him." "Understood." Again, it was my mother-in-law who responded. All I could do was mutter meaningless words like, and, So, "Ashley, please take care." I thought she would wait in the hallway until the surgery was over. But surprisingly, she said she would go home first. What about you? I have other things to take care of after this. I'm counting on you. I wondered what could be more important to her than her beloved son. Despite my confusion, I decided to wait in the waiting room. At that moment, my mother-in-law's expression seemed worried yet faintly pleased. As if she couldn't contain a slight smile. I had no idea of her dreadful scheme at that time. About 2 hours later, the surgery was successfully completed. However, a 2-week hospital stay was necessary, so I decided to return home alone. Those 2 weeks would likely be hell for me. Given her past behavior, my mother-in-law would probably take full advantage of being able to bully me without restraint. Although things had been bad before, the presence of my husband might have somewhat limited her actions. What would happen now that he wasn't there? The thought terrified me. As I headed home with these fears, my steps grew heavier. Hello. I called out as I opened the front door, but there was no response. This was usual, but the house was silent, no TV sound. Nothing, though her bag was there, indicating she was home. I peeked into my mother-in-law's room, but no one was there. Wondering what was going on, I went to my room to drop off my things. What? My bag dropped with a thud. My room had completely changed from how it was before I left for the hospital. Why? There's nothing here. Yes, my room was completely empty. The clothes rack, the desk and chair I used for work, and the small shelf where I kept documents and books were all gone. Even the closet was empty, the bedding I usually stored there wasn't inside. Why? I was so shocked that I knelt on the floor. Who would do such a thing? There was only one person I could think of. Oh? What are you doing here? Just as I thought of her, the person in question appeared behind me. Snickering and holding a pair of removed gloves, clearly having been busy with some task. This was your doing, wasn't it, Helen? Don't say it like that. I just cleaned up the belongings of someone who was squatting in this house. Where did you put them? Without any sign of remorse, my mother-in-law casually said, in the storage shed. Why? I told you, you were just squatting here. You're just a parasite living off Davy, so it's fitting for someone like you to live in the storage shed. I was at a loss for words. Just living off him? No, more than that, to call someone a parasite. It seemed unimaginable that someone could lack such compassion. The storage shed was large enough, but only slightly taller than I am. Even lying down, there wasn't enough room to stretch out my legs. How was I supposed to live in there? I put on some random sandals at the entrance and opened the sliding door to the shed in the garden. Because it was done in just 2 or 3 hours, my belongings were thrown in haphazardly. Documents that I had neatly filed were scattered all over. From now on, that's your place in this house. Don't come over here anymore. Oh, I will allow you to use the toilet and the bath. We wouldn't want any bad smells coming from the yard. My mother-in-law snickered behind me. She seemed delighted at having managed to drive me out. That's enough. Enough? You don't have a choice. You have to live there. No. I won't live here. I'm leaving. What? I've reached my limit. I can't live with someone who treats me like this anymore. So, I won't be coming back here. Do whatever you want. Davy thinks the same as I do, that you're just a parasite. So it won't be sad or anything if you're gone. I always thought you were not suitable for Davy from the start. After her final words, my mother-in-law turned her back on me and went inside the house. To escape this hell, I made a call to a certain place. 2 weeks later, it was the day my husband was discharged from the hospital. Of course, I did not go to pick him up. I didn't care anymore, So I leaned back on the sofa and relaxed with a book when the phone rang. It was my husband. Maybe he had left the hospital. Hello? Hello. What are you thinking? Don't just leave on your own. He seemed quite angry, making a fuss over the phone. Annoyed, I took the smartphone away from my ear, waited for him to stop shouting, and then put it back to my ear to talk. Not so much on my own. I just couldn't take it anymore. That's why I left. I'm telling you not to leave without my permission. Mom was sad because she tried to stop you from leaving. Even now, he still believes his mother did nothing wrong, despite how cornered I felt. I decided to tell him everything my mother-in-law had done to me. So, you think you can live with someone who tells you to live in a storage shed? What? What are you? You saw it several times, didn't you? That there was no meal prepared just for me? Or that the water heater was turned off or turned cold when it was my turn? He fell silent. Did you know that when I was cold and wrapped up in a blanket, she threw it outside? And then she moved all my belongings to the shed. That's why I said I was leaving. I'll check with Mom. Behind his words, I heard my mother-in-law shouting, "What? Ashley. Wait. I'm not done talking yet. What is it?" He sounded quite worn out after just a bit of conversation. Your mother called me a parasite. She said I was just living off you. What? No, I never said. He suddenly panicked. It makes sense, because if anyone was being taken care of, it was. The call was suddenly cut off. Sighing, I picked up the book I had left open and resumed reading. However, I had only read a few lines when the phone rang again. This time, it was from my mother-in-law. Yes? Ashley. What is this all about? What do you mean? Is it true that Davy has been laid off? Yes, my mother-in-law had called me a parasite, but that was incorrect. I was the one supporting both my husband and mother-in-law. After we got married, my husband was laid off and had been unemployed since. I had promised to keep it a secret because he didn't want to worry his mother. And I had always kept that promise. Even though I was being mistreated and he did not help me despite knowing it. Every morning, to keep his unemployment a secret, my husband would leave the house at the same time and return at the same time. I believed that he was going out to look for jobs, maybe at the employment office. But then one day, I overheard him on the phone in our room. Oh, work? Well, my wife is earning enough for us, so it's okay. I just chose a woman with money because I wanted to make life easy for my mom. As he spoke those words, I felt a chill spread through my limbs. At the same time, my feelings for him cooled, and I no longer saw any reason to stay with him. At that moment, any love I had probably disappeared. Hey, what about this? You were the one bringing money into the house? Yes, that's true. As I recalled my husband's words and zoned out, my mother-in-law pressed me for answers. How? Where do you get that kind of money? I didn't want any more to do with them. Thinking it was the last time, I decided to reveal the truth about myself. You were never interested in what I do. But I started a beauty-related company and own a chain of stores. We have 23 stores now. What? You mean you're the boss? Not anymore. I just come in when I like and give some advice. Well, I do check some documents occasionally. But it might have seemed like I was doing nothing, right? Even now, I have a significant income and assets. That's why leaving the in-laws' house didn't put me in any difficulty. I contacted my parents, stayed with them for a few days, and then moved into an apartment worth $3 million. Ashley. I won't be coming back there. I quickly cut off her cajoling tone, sensing what she was about to say. That. Please, I'm sorry. Are you really going to abandon us? We're family, aren't we? What is she saying? Her attitude, as if the things she had done to me didn't matter, filled me with anger. You were the ones who said I was just squatting. You didn't think of me as family, did you? I'll apologize for that. Even if you apologize, I will never come back. I raised my voice, and my mother-in-law, startled, fell silent. I will divorce David. This ends any connection I have with you. Please don't contact me again. I will send the divorce papers by mail. Please have David sign them and submit them. If you don't, I will take necessary actions. After saying this, I hung up and immediately blocked my mother-in-law's number. I decided to keep David's number a bit longer in case I needed to contact him regarding the divorce. A few days later, I received a message from him saying, "I have filed for divorce." That went smoother than expected. Now, I have no ties with that house. Mom and I are earning day-to-day by doing part-time jobs. I occasionally receive such messages. Since I no longer need to use it, I plan to block his number soon. I've started going into the office more frequently. I've also started actively participating in meetings I had not been attending much lately. It seems I really do enjoy working, and being a bit busy suits me well. For now, I think I'm good without love and with my ringless hand. I carry my bag and head to work again today.